everybody, so today we're going to do how to brace your core. Now I called this video first step to a six-pack because if you don't understand how to properly brace your core, then you're not going to get any of the aesthetic benefits of any core exercise, like getting more definition in your abdominal muscles that can lead to a six-pack. In addition to that aesthetic value, core bracing is really important because if you don't know how to properly engage your core while you're doing literally any exercise, you're not going to get the maximum benefit out of it, and you're also going to be a lot more injury prone, and that's how a lot of things like back problems or hip flexor problems can start. So I hope by the end of this video you know everything you ever wanted to know about core bracing and how to do it effectively. I'll see you on the mat. Let's get started. So I lied about the meet me on the mat part. There is one really important point I want to make before we get into that. So core bracing isn't something that you do exclusively on an exercise mat. It's something that you should be aware of whenever you're doing any sort of exercise. And the biggest mistake I see people make is that they try to take their activities of daily life posture and hold in their breath and say, okay, I've braced my core. And that's not exactly it. So if you're trying to take your activities of daily life posture, if you're like me and you have a sedentary kind of job or you have other sedentary activities in your life and you have your hunched over shoulders, you have a bit of anterior pelvic tilt going on. I know this isn't the best camera angle to see that, and I'm just going to go, I'm going to brace my core like I'm about to get punched and then try to do a row. You're not engaging your core properly. You're still hunched over, your anterior pelvic tilt's still going on, and you're basically working the muscles that created those muscle imbalances rather than trying to correct those by properly engaging your core. So if you were trying to do a row here, what you would want to do instead is I'm going to go from shoulders down. I'm going to bring my shoulder blades down and together. I'm going to get myself out of the hunching position, get my shoulders on top of my ribs correctly. Then I'm going to put my hands on the bottom of my ribs and the top of my hips, and I'm going to suck my pelvis in by trying to bring my ribs into my hips, shoulders down my back, and consciously breathe to do the biggest range of motion on the exhale to activate my transverse abdominis rather than to just kind of hold my breath like I'm about to get punched or something, which is the most common thing I see. So when we're on the mat, we want to replicate the right posture and get our breathing right instead of just doing the same sort of bad posture, bad activities of daily life, and keep working the muscle imbalances rather than learning how to properly engage the core. So rant over, we're going to start for real on the mat this time. So now we're on the floor, we're going to get onto our mat, and we're going to actually work on replicating this posture on there. So we're going to get on our mat, and the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to make sure our feet are pointed in a straight line. That's one of the biggest tells that you can see. And we're going to keep our knees out at about a 90-degree angle here. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our fingertips to our hip bones, and we're going to check to see if those are in a straight line. My right one is always a little bit more up than my left. So I'm just going to push that down ever so slightly. And now we're going to do the first part, which is our rib to hip connection. So we're going to keep our fingertips on our hip bones, and we're going to put our thumbs kind of at the base of our rib cage. So this should feel like the bottom part of your rib cage. We're going to scoop our pelvis off the floor, so your back should be coming off the mat here, like I can stick my hand under. And then to properly get that rib to hip connection, we're going to keep our hips in a straight line and scoop it into the floor. So you'll know you're in this position when you kind of can't move any further. You're kind of that motion where you're feeling like you're scooping your ribs into your hips. You can't go any further. You also shouldn't be able to stick your hands under. There should be no space between your back and the mat. It should be pinned flat on the mat. And you want to keep those hips in a straight line. So next we're going to look at our shoulders. And getting your hips in the right position will help get your shoulders in the right position. So we're going to take any sort of hunching, any sort of incorrect posture we have here. We're going to put our hands down, palms up, and we're just going to drag our shoulder blades down and together like they have some sort of lever pulling them down, like you're cranking them down, your back down and together. Now when you're doing this, you don't want to do this and have your lower back, that your pelvic tilt that we just did arch up. So you want to keep that pinned to the mat the entire time. That should actually make bringing your shoulders down your mat a bit easier. So now that we've done our shoulders and our hips, you might notice that if you put your hands on your stomach, it feels a bit like a breadbasket. And that's not, or a dome, sometimes people call it, that's not necessarily bad. That means we've engaged our rectus abdominis, which is our six-pack muscle, but we haven't engaged our transverse abdominis, which is the muscle that wraps around from our spine to kind of where our six-pack meets. So it wraps around like a support belt. So that's the next thing we need to engage. So this one can be a little bit fun to engage. So, and I want you to be unashamed while you're doing this because you're not going to get the benefit if you don't do this. So we're going to stay here, shoulders down, hips pinned to the floor, pelvic tilted, back pinned to the floor, I should say instead. And we're going to take a big inhale. And when we're going to exhale, we're going to do this. So shushing, snake sound, whatever you want to do. We want to take a big forceful exhale. And if your hands were on your stomach, you might have felt something happen there. You should have felt your ribs kind of knit into your stomach when you're going inhale. And exhale, it's like your stomach is coming in together, like that you're kind of almost like a corset. It's twisting it in together. So when you're making that sound, you're engaging your transverse abdominis and your stomach should feel a little bit flatter than when you weren't before. This is what people mean when they say suck your belly button into your spine, but most people don't understand that means you have to exhale to do that. So the transverse abdominis is engaged on the exhale. So when you're in this position, the shoulders down your back, ribs pinned into your hips, back completely flat on the mat, and you're exhaling out. This is core bracing. This is what it should feel like if you're doing any sort of core exercise. You should be actively trying to keep this position where you're engaging your rectus abdominis and transverse abdominis. And you should be able to feel both coming in. You should feel like your ribs are knitting closer together. You should never deviate from this position. So you shouldn't try to lift your back up off the floor. You shouldn't lift your shoulders off the floor. One hip shouldn't be coming up, etc. So if this, to really get a sense of like how this can help with your ab exercises, you should also try doing some diaphragmatic breathing here because that's essential. So like when I have my hands on my stomach here and they're really not moving because I'm kind of breathing through my chest while I'm talking. But if I go ahead and take a big inhale, you can see my stomach and then exhale. And just working on that while you're in this position can actually do a lot to help engage with proper breath mechanics and to help engage with proper abdominal movements. So even if you wanted to do something else, like a heel slide that's pretty basic, you would inhale, and then on your exhale, you would do your actual motion here. So inhale, exhale, just slide your heel out and back to the 90-degree position. You would do it on your exhale, so you'd be engaging your transverse abdominis alongside your rectus abdominis. So you're engaging the two muscles, you're keeping your back on the floor, your hips and shoulders in a straight line, and we're out of our everyday posture here. So this is how you would go about bracing your core. This is how you would go about doing every ab exercise. And this is also what you should think about replicating while standing and moving and doing any other exercise like that. So that's how to brace your core. Let me know what you thought of this video. Like, comment, subscribe, keep me posted. Thanks, guys.